Goblins.
Corvid Knights.
Kind.
Lend us your ears. And a huge thank you to all of our Patreons.
Thank you to the Pit Fighters, the First Swords, and all of the Bright Stars, Truth and Courage. Well, sorry about that mishap there, Will. I do apologise. I didn't mean to probably try not... and damage your sarcophagus. Goblins!
Oh, Ed. Yeah, we had to redo the intro because Ed decided to give a blow to the breastplate.
Sarcophagus. I meant esophagus.
Esophagus. I was thinking sarcophagus. Is that what you're saying it is? But I've had to cut out the intro where Ed actually punches the breastplate and nearly breaks my windpipe.
I'm sorry.
So, you know what? There's been sacrifices made
overrated.
to do this review of a book that we adore. And that book is...
The Daughter's War.
You know what, Ed? You nearly broke my windpipe and then you take the book. Which is actually something that our patron,
I took
Ed,
the book and you're
me.
Not going to let us off the hook.
Whose is it?
Sorry, that is actually your copy from our lovely patron, Ohio Ed, Eddie Black, who did go and see Christopher Buehlman.
So
and then brought the book over from the US to come and hang out with us.
Has travelled far. And I actually owe Ohio Ed a lot. Of course, you and Papa Gwynne have been pushing this book. But I think that was, the one pushing it over the edge was having it physically to read. And basically, in short, this review is basically us going to be saying that we love it. So to kind of go through, what was our journey like? Yeah. Papa Gwynne, he hasn't read much in the last few years. And in 2024, he's got back into a bit of reading. And he said there's been a few incredible reads. And probably for him, near the top of the pile or top of the pile is The Daughter's War by Christopher Buehlman, his latest release, which... I'd say you can read without having read anything else. It might change your perspective.
Just anything else in general.
Ever.
This could be your first book ever.
It could be. So, Ed, bit about the premise. If you say the premise, and I'll kind of say kind of what vibes it gives me.
Sounds good to me.
It feels a bit traditional in some aspects in that, it's pretty epic. There's a big war going on and there's fantastical creatures and we've kind of got that family nobility in play as well. But it is not traditional, I would say. This is epic fantasy that is rooted in reality. It feels gritty, it feels realistic, it feels like we're transported to a different world where these events really did happen. This does not feel tropey, it feels natural and organic, and whilst it has got those traditional tropes I said, they almost feel unrecognisable because of how different it is. So Ed, what actually is The Daughter's War?
So this is a prequel to the very successful Black Tongue Thief.
But you can read it without having read.
It is essentially a standalone, and it follows the character Galva, a young warrior who is in the battalion of the Corvid Knights. So she has been sent over with the human force to take on the goblins across the sea, and she is, as I said, in the Corvid Knights, which is, so all the horses have been killed in this goblin war. It's a pretty horrific war, and to have some kind of heavy cavalry, heavy style of infantry, really, some special ops basically, they have trained these giant war ravens in battle tactics, and she is part of the battalion who are looking after these great big corvids, and then taking them across the sea, and then she's going to fight in their division. And so she looks after a couple of corvids alongside others with different handlers. And it's just, what a fantastic premise already. You're following this young warrior she comes from a family of great beings. Her family are very kind of high up in society.
The Dom
as well.
Bragas.
Exactly. And so one of her brothers is a general. Her father is very high up as well. And she has a few brothers, doesn't she? So, and they all play their own part in the war where she is. She is she the youngest, or she's very young in her family? She's about 20?
Second youngest.
20 years old, isn't she?
Yeah.
And what I love about her character, she brings with her this kind of unflinching honesty and morality, which is, really rare, I think, in a fantasy book, but rare in a fantasy book that is centered on realism. It felt very different to, considering the setting was very dark, very grim. Like these goblin wars, you've never read goblins like this. It's, you hear the word goblins, you think, Lord of the Rings, Moria. They're like, that was my goblin.
That was nice, Ed.
Right, yeah. But these goblins are genuinely horrific, horrible creatures. they feel like a parasite, really, don't they? It feels a little bit apocalyptic.
These are
times.
not your normal goblins.
Definitely not. But watching all of it unfold from Galva's eyes, and then seeing you also see the perspective of her. Is it her younger brother or her, her youngest brother? Through letters that he is sending, are really quite emotionally charged, and I think that's the main thing that I love about the Daughter's War, is the humanity, the heart, the way that you really feel emotion for these characters. And Galva is a absolute brilliant centre POV.
Yeah, she's one of my favourite leading characters of any book. I think you touched upon kind of how Christopher Buehlman, I'd say he's a master storyteller in this. He finds ways to unveil different aspects in very creative ways. We've got most of the story is a chronicler's tale from Galva.
Yeah.
Part of it though is in the epistolary form. It is letters she has had from her brothers. So this is one POV, but we are able to see events through the eyes of others through these letters that have survived and that Galva has got.
Yeah.
And that is just genius to find a different perspective. For also,
it's a new angle of the war.
Yeah, but also I was going to say that Galva is an unreliable narrator. She is a character who does not have the highest esteem of herself. And so an incredible way of showing us more of the truth of Galva is seeing how she is viewed by those closest to her in letters, that she even apologises for the praise that's about to come, and she says that they're rose-tinted and they're not true. And that kind of, it just adds so much kind of reflection, doesn't it? Yeah. To the character, and that whole
all of the sudden this utter
aspect,
depth to her.
Exactly, which I have not seen used in a book before. It shows that Christopher Buehlman, I'd say, is a master to find new ways in a time now where so many books have been written, so many wonderful books, and so much has been achieved in literature. To find new ways to hit those heights is just absolutely incredible, and it's inspiring, and it's made me want to go and write. And I imagine it did you as well, especially as you're much further in your writing journey.
It didn't make me want to write. It made me want to give up, because I don't think it's so hard. You can't hold a candle to Buehlman.
You either go one of two ways. You're inspired, or you're just like, I will never write anything like this.
Completely dejected, but in a very positive way, where I thought one day I would love to write a story that is, even close to this level of humanity, realism and emotion. And also, I got to say, if I could write a bad guy as well as the character in here that you utterly despise, then a job well done to me, because seriously, hats off to Buehlman. The bad guy in this is one of the best villains that I've ever read, and it's not in the generic villain sense.
The villain monologue of why unveiling their terrible plan.
He reminds I won't say he reminds me of actually a big spoiler, but it's just brilliantly crafted, and it does feel like Buehlman is a master. And the
arc as well, because a lot of villains, they're villains from the beginning, but in real life you often don't know who is going to ruin your life, do you?
No.
And so you go through the arc of realising as this character becomes the villain.
Yeah.
It is magnificent, and Christopher Buehlman, he makes you hate others, but he also somehow made me love ostrich-sized ravens.
Even bigger than ostrich-sized
called war
corvids.
corvids.
Giant ravens. I love these creatures so I think much. They're about, I'm a sucker for fantasy creatures.
So I think they're about 7 foot tall.
Yeah.
They look like ostriches, a bit bigger. They're tougher, and they've got the intelligence of ravens, and they can speak a few words and kind of understand
they learn commands.
What's going on. But they're not
But they all have their own personalities. And what I love about The Daughter's War is, as a Total War player, you have to think about, what buildings you have, the supply lines, how many people left in your province. It feels like Buehlman's played Total War, but it does feel very medieval, 100 Years War specific, accurate, the way that they, bring along supply lines and food and the priority, the pecking order, if you will.
Nice.
That all comes into play, but it's not just a little detail. It's not just an accessory to the story. Christopher Buehlman uses details to make it an essential part of the plot, an essential part of uncovering just another layer of this of these characters through the experiences that they go through, and it is absolutely just done absolutely brilliantly.
I was going to say also, you got the very intimate core, and then you got that kind of epic backdrop. There's incredible action sequences. You've got the army moving. When Dan Jones's Essex Dogs came out, we said that this is unique historical fiction because it shows us the grittier side, the kind of what happens when you're marching from one place to the other with large armies.
It's about the little people in the big event.
Exactly, and it takes away the romanticism that is ascribed to these battles, because they're not marching along very happy. They're all on rations, they're losing water, some are dying, there's poverty-stricken villages following then diseases. So this is the fantasy version, I would say, if you want that grittier, more realistic outlook at warfare. Of course, a lot of books nowadays, they take away the romance of war, which is good because war is not beautiful. No. And so a lot do that, I'm saying it goes the extra mile in showing so much that you really can't in a lot of books because it's page time. Yeah. But Christopher Buehlman has perfectly wrapped it up in what I'd say is in the top 3 standalones that I've ever read. It's actually quite small if you think about how much it achieves in that amount of time.
It feels like a big story.
I think that is because of, similar to what we say of Amanda Scott's Boudica, whilst it is incredibly epic, it's got quite a small cast of characters. Yeah. Maybe 7 or 8 with quite a few other smaller characters, but 7 or 8 at the core who are more developed. They are the heart of the story. They are what it is anchored on. And then you've got so many others that kind of dip in. And I really admired how you've got characters that they come in for a few pages as a major role, and then they're gone. It feels like real life, because if you meet someone on a day out and then they influence your life and then you leave in an army of thousands and thousands, you're probably not going to see them again.
No.
And this is one of the only books that I'd say really depicts that.
Yeah.
There hasn't got the plot armor. Most of these people don't have armor, as you find out when they terribly die.
Yeah.
But it is just magnificent, and maybe we're being very superlative in this review, but it's because we love it in every single way. The prose is magnificent. If we did a video, which I'd like to do at some point, talking about basically copying Philip Chase, talking about best authors of prose, best for world building, best for action, best for characters. Yeah. He would definitely be in there for prose.
And I also would put him in there for battles, epic and small scale.
Yeah.
It feels very similar to Papa Gwynne's style of battles, where you have, or like the Lord of the Rings battles, where you have a small scope and then it goes out big picture, small.
The Lord of the Rings films,
yes,
which are full of Peter Jackson. He had a rule. Was it for Helm's Deep?
Yeah.
Specifically, or all of his action sequences?
Well, Helm's Deep specifically, I think that's where.
Okay, so basically, Peter Jackson said that his idea to really keep you in the heart of the characters, but show how epic the battle was, he'd have one shot intimate, one shot epic, one shot intimate, one shot epic. So everything was kept like that. And Papa Gwynne has kind of taken that as inspiration for his writing, the images he tries to show the reader. So yeah, and I think I'd agree. It feels
Buehlman definitely does that, and he does the intimate level, the small skirmishes, the small battles. You know, one kind of brawl here or there. It's just done so well. And what I love is that sometimes his dialogue even feels as exhilarating as action. It feels like everyone is on the edge of a knife, and I don't think that could ring any more true than in this book. It's a masterpiece of fantasy. It's gone straight into my top 10 of fantasy, as the video recently that we did, which I assume is out by now. William's in charge of the schedule. He's the schedule king.
I am the schedule.
He changed his name on my phone to the schedule king.
Schedule king. I need to actually do that.
It's immediately got into my top 10, and I then read Between Two Fires, which I will also be recording a review of very soon, because I have a lot to say about that book as well.
Yeah, The Daughter's War is one of my favourite books of all time. The only reason I'd say not to read this is if you don't want a really dark read at the time, because it is gritty, it is dark. There is hope, there is love, there is romance. It's got the whole sweep of human emotion in The Daughter's War, but there are moments that will make you cry and moments that made me very, very sad. So I'd say the only reason is basically if you're not ready for a dark read,
book,
wait a bit until or
wait a week.
Have some Terry Pratchett or something lined up for afterwards.
Yeah.
If you don't want to be down
First Law
in the dumps
to be happy,
too long.
okay?
Yeah. Well, it does make you laugh, but
First Law makes me happy.
But anyway, The Daughter's Law.
That's the First
sequel.
Law. That's the sequel.
The Daughter's War. I just cannot wait to see what Christopher Buehlman puts out next, and I will be reading Between Two Fires when I'm not drowning under the university reading pile.
Well, I think Between Two Fires and your university experience are kind of very kindred spirits.
Yeah, to be fair, the title alone kind of, it makes me feel like I'm experiening.
Between Two Fires, engulfed in one giant flame of Adam Bede. Who knows?
And David Copperfield.
Lovely.
But yeah, that is our review of The Daughter's War. Out of 10, how many would you give it?
10.5.
Wow. You broke the rating system.
No. Well, genuinely, I think it is a perfect book that I am going to be rereading a lot in the future.
And it is one that I'd recommend to so many people. I'd say this is what modern fantasy needs to be like. This should be the staple. This should be going down as one of the classics that you walk into Waterstone, someone who's never read fantasy before, this should be plonked on the table next to 100%. Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Shadow of the Gods. They should all be on that front table for where to start.
Thank you for watching.
That is our review of The Daughters
Hopefully
War.
your goblin ears have enjoyed it. If you'd like to check out any of our other videos, then please click a like and subscribe below.
But thank you very much for watching. Let us know what you've been reading. Let us know if you intend to pick this up, or if you have already.
Truth and Courage.
The Brothers Gwynne.
The Brothers Gwynne.